It's time for Screen Junkies Movie Fights.
What is happening, everybody? You are watching Movie Fights, and before we go any further, I gotta ask one question. Where are my owls at? Hoot, hoot, Owl Nation, hashtag Gahooligans, hashtag Owl Nation. Thanks for tuning in to Movie Fights Live, and we have got three powerful competitors sitting at this table, ready to throw down. Oh yes, Owl Nation, Percival Power, Gahooligans, look at that! Percival in the house. Hoot hoot, hoot hoot.
Keep your pinions to yourself, Hal.
Hoot hoot, hoot hoot.
Pinions? Pinions? Anybody? Okay.
All right, pinions.
Pinions. Owls have pinions. That's what their claws are called.
Oh, wow.
So keep your pinions to yourself. Okay. I'll be here all episode.
First up, dropping serious owl knowledge. I got my main man. You know him from the Schmodown. You know him from the Cancel Too Soon podcast. It's the Bibbs, William Bibbiani.
That's owl I know.
Oh, man, killing it. You are coming in here talons bared.
He's just a pile of owl droppings.
Yeah.
Bibbs, I want to give you some props here. I said before we got started, sick Van Halen shirt, and you gave me the fun fact that.
Yeah, this is the shirt that Keanu Reeves wore in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I didn't steal it from his dresser. It's just the same shirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I love it.
Representing. It has nothing to do with anything we're talking about today, but it's fun.
Well played, good sir.
Yeah.
This next fella, he is an esteemed comic book writer, currently the writer of Supergirl, and he is an Eisner Award winner for his great comic compilation, Love is Love, Mark ANDREYKO.
That sounds impressive.
Well, I
want you to be my hype man. Wherever I go, just walk in and say that before I enter the room.
Oh, hell yes. Well, I mean, you've cobbled together an impressive resume, Mark. I don't know how you did.
Vin Diesel has a hype man, and Vin and I have a lot in common.
Really?
Really?
Haircuts.
Bald.
Haircuts.
Okay.
Speaking of bald, our last competitor, but not least competitor, he has been killing it in here on Movie Fights, and you can hear him crush some nerd-related information on the very entertaining Nerd Goat podcast. Welcome back, Ed Greer.
Hey, Hal. It's really great to be back. This panel has me intimidated. They're really awesome debaters. I'm ready to get it on.
He's been buttering this up all day. He just wants us to lull us into a false sense of security before he drops debate bombs.
Yeah, this is the nicest you guys will be at this moment. Like, I'm just wondering how many times I'm going to have to say, stop screaming, one person talk. Okay, I don't want to jinx it.
Start taking bets in chat.
He doesn't listen to that.
No, I don't.
Looking forward to this fight. And helping me make sense of it all, we have, the box office prognosticator extraordinaire, the Movie Fights champion, decorated Schmodown competitor. What else can I say? Mr. Dan Murrell.
Hello, Hal. How are you?
Dan, what's going on? Any thoughts about this weekend's upcoming box office?
All Halloween all the time, Hal.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a big weekend. I saw the estimates went up again today, and I think it's going to go even higher than that.
I'm calling it 105.
Really?
Wow.
That's impressive.
I do think it's going to be one of those that they can't predict how big it's going to be. We're just going to see how it does over the weekend.
Nice.
So it's a big weekend for Michael Myers.
Oh yeah, big weekend for Michael Myers. Oh, imagine if like Austin Powers 4 came out on the same weekend as Halloween. Then you'd have Mike Myers or Love Guru 2.
There we go.
You know what? I'm going to quit while I'm behind. Dan Murrell, thank you. And she is the voice of the people, our social media ambassador. Welcome, Danielle Radford.
Oh, hi. It's me. I'm on camera now.
Yeah. So, through the first 3 rounds, Dan and I will be chiming in with our takes on each question. But then, if there's a tie, you're going to come in with the poll. Danielle, please explain.
So we have a poll that is going to be on YouTube, and there are a lot of really cool, fun polls up on the Movie Fights Live hashtag on Twitter. Please join those. But the one that counts for this show is the poll that happens on YouTube. If you are confused about that, have any questions, go down in the description box below, or you can ask us in the chat. I'm sure by now we have autofill answers about how you can get to that poll. So yeah, we'll tell you what that poll looks like either way, but it will also be the tiebreaker in case these two dudes do not agree. And then once we start getting to the speed rounds and stuff, there will be no more polls. I have to be a person. I hate it. And yes, please join us over on Movie Fights Live on Twitter. A lot of people are putting up amazing other takes, explanations of what they would have chosen for questions, basically doing their own like kind of rebuttals in there, and they're fantastic. So I try to highlight those as often as I can.
Owls.
Lots of owls, man. Give us them owls.
Some owls, some dank memes, some sick memes. Oh, hell yeah. Hoot, hoot. That's what I'm talking about. Wow, we're really embracing the owls. I love it.
Dank memes.
Well, you are.
It sounds wrong.
I mean, someone made a...
Everyone else is too. I need to get on the owl train.
Yeah, Dan won't set foot in the barn. Oh, Dan, I mean, Dan, you wouldn't be you if you weren't a little hesitant to the whole owl thing.
It's true.
But I appreciate it. Okay, so here's how our match works for the uninitiated, or if you just want to get reinitiated. So there are 3 regular round questions. After those 3 regular rounds, 2 of our 3 competitors will move on to the speed round. And someone can be down 3-zip and still make a comeback in that speed round. Man, this is some exciting stuff. Feathers are about to fly. You guys ready? JTE, drop the package.
Prepare to die. Ladies and gentlemen, no.
It's main event time.
You ever notice there are a lot of fights in movies?
Finish him!
Thank you, Thor. All right. Question number 1. The Flash has been moved back to at least 2021. How should DC move forward with the Justice League? We are asking, how should DC save and or move forward with the Justice League? And we're going to start with William Bibbiani.
Okay, so the problem that Warner Brothers has with their DC properties is that people don't have confidence in their direction. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know if they're going to like it. They started off with a very focused vision. It was grimdark. Some people liked it. Some people hated it. And now they're spinning off into all these different directions in movies that may or may not follow the same continuity, like the upcoming Joker film. What we need to do is give Warner Brothers the freedom to be creative and tell different kinds of stories that aren't beholden all to one continuity, but also tell the fans this is a plan. We know what we're doing. And that's something I like to call infinite Earths. We're going to have multiple continuities. One that is the current iteration, the grimdark, the badass, the heavy, maybe even the R-rated. And then that gives us the freedom to tell new concurrent versions of, say, Wonder Woman and Superman, which would be, instead of grimdark, would be noble bright, would be iconic, would be good versus evil, the kind of classical versions of the characters we all want. And then any other kind of story they want to tell that is separate from that continuity would be like an Elseworlds tale. And then, if you just include some key elements that exist within all the different movies, like, say, the presence of someone like the Monitor, eventually you can build up to some sort of crisis on those infinite Earths and tie them all together and give the fans not just all the heroes teaming up together, but different types of heroes, different versions of the heroes. So you got, the Ben Affleck Batman. You can bring in the Michael Keaton Batman as well. You can bring in the Christian Bale Batman. You can have all the different Supermen fight each other. You can have a huge, expansive universe in which literally anything is possible, but it feels like you're playing by the rules and people know what you're doing and they can appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Bibbs, laying out the beginnings of a grand vision there. DC employee, Mark Andreyko.
Freelancer. I work for many publishers. I have no vested interest in the Warner Brothers studios. I think you should go the other direction. I think you need to do what James Bond does. I think every time we recast something and doing a reboot and restarting it is exhausting. I think continuity has become something that we're going to start seeing be a problem in the Marvel movies. My mom saw the first Avengers movie and loved it. Then she saw the second one and was like, who are all these characters and why do I care? The Marvel continuity they're gonna have to reboot that very soon because it's becoming too dense. Just recast. I would do a Justice League 2 movie that uses the same cast members that worked. Recast who doesn't. Don't comment on it. Do a Hall of Justice movie. Do a big, positive, bright movie. And just make movies that are good. Don't try and make this continuity. Don't try and be the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That was lightning in a bottle. Be your own thing, because do what they were starting to do with Justice League versus Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman by Patty Jenkins had a specific vision. She would work in the DC Extended Universe, but it wasn't just a Zack Snyder thing. Just make good movies, and then you can have them cross over. The continuity is becoming what almost killed comic books in the 90s, and it's going to start happening in movies. I don't need movies to explain the backstory. I want movies to be exciting and to be full meals. I don't need sequels that are just commercials for the next one. And I think you can do that. I think the audiences are savvy enough that although the multiple continuity stuff works in comic books, it's just too much. Give me a good movie.
Thank you, Mark. Ed Greer.
Well, I think we're going to have some overlap in some of the ideas in this because smart is just smart. But in my conception of what DC should do, I do believe they need to abdicate the throne to Marvel for right now. They need to, because they look stupid competing with Marvel right now. When you look at the movies that they've stacked up against what Marvel stacked up, it looks like you're like the Houston Rockets trying to beat the Warriors.
They took them to 7 games, though.
They took them to 7 games, but come on, man, that's not going to happen this year because they lost. Anyway,
That's
basketball
hockey.
talk.
I thought that was
Basketball
hockey.
talk. But the bottom line is, when you're facing someone who has that sort of championship pedigree, and you try directly to compete with them, most of the time you look foolish. Most of the time, the smartest thing to do is wait it out, build up your draft picks, build your team better. And that's what DC could do. They could do standalone movies that have nothing to do with each other for years, until Marvel starts to have a 70-year-old, Robert Downey Jr. trying to be Iron Man. They don't have Captain America anymore. These guys are falling off, getting bored, doing other movies, and you can have a whole standalone roster of movies. And the most popular of those characters, you could bind them into some continuity if you would like to later, or not. That is what I would do.
All right, fight it out, gentlemen.
All right, well, it sounds like what Ed is suggesting is kind of what I'm saying. You can basically tell any kind of story that you want. It's just a matter of making sure people know that that's actually like intentional and not just throwing things out there willy-nilly, telling people what kind of superhero will actually team up with different kinds. If you have like clearly delineated like 3 separate branching continuities going on at one time, you can do anything you want and get away with it, and your types of movies are possible, and your types of movies are possible, and the types of movies people like now aren't written out of continuity. That's one of the problems that we have with DC. They made a very clear creative choice right at the beginning, and they committed to it full bore, and now we're stuck with it whether or not we like it. My version acknowledges that it moves on.
I would argue they didn't commit to it full bore. I would argue that the reshoots of Batman vs. Superman and Suicide Squad and Justice League proved that they weren't committed to anything. And I think what you're saying by having 3 concurrent continuities is so complicated. Movie executives, to paraphrase Batman, are a cowardly and superstitious lot.
But we're the executives in this argument, though. We get to make these decisions.
But in the reality of the real world, executives, every time an executive changes, they're going to want their thumbprints on it. So just tell good movies, and similar to where we're kind of butting up against each other, is that tell good movies. And if those movies work, they can complement each other, but don't tell people these are the rules. If I need a chart to figure out where these movies fit into a timeline, I'm already bored.
Exactly.
But I would like to say, as a fire off to both of you guys, the one thing I think multiple lines of continuity is done best in Disney's, and Warner Brothers' animation arm. Their animation arm is killing it on the different Elseworld stories, Batman, Ninja, whatever they want to do.
It can be done.
They're doing that well for that, and I think it's best done in that medium. That could be my opinion, but I think that's the case.
I think you're absolutely right. Because
go ahead. And then the thing I'll say against your argument is the recasting with this modern thing. Like we'll have like Aquaman from the last movie, and then a new Batman, and then an old Wonder Woman, and so on and so forth. I think that's a little bit off-putting to the audiences that have bought into these particular movies. I would say just let them run their course. The ones that are popular, like Wonder Woman, let her run her course. The other ones, let them run their course, and then.
And in my case,
I completely disagree with that on a level of. Judi Dench has been in 2 different James Bonds. Just let it be. Just let it exist. I think because we're all nerds and we all love this stuff and know minutia, we overthink this so much. If you make a good movie, look at the Wonder Woman movie. You don't have to have seen any DC Universe movies for that. You don't have to know who Wonder Woman is, and that movie is a satisfying.
But
James
in order
Bond
to
is a
do
special
that,
case, though. I would say that James Bond is a special case. It's the movie that's done that over the course of time.
and also, it never has any other continuity to deal with. It can just reset itself, and nobody cares. In the case of Wonder Woman, yeah, it's set in its own separate corner, and they had to go back in time in order to do that. If they made a concurrent Wonder Woman movie set in like today, they would actually have to deal with continuity with other superhero stories. Or at the very least, they'd have to consider it. At the very least, they'd have to consider it. Now, what you guys are talking about, like, oh, my idea like is so off-putting. DC is doing it right now. They have multiple versions in animation. They have the TV versions of certain characters. We have the live-action movie versions. As long as there's a clear label on it. That's why I'm suggesting a label. So you have Earth 1, Earth 2, DC icons, DC Grimm.
To your point, those lines of demarcation is why those work. If you transpose all of those things into the same sort of live action, I think it would confuse
people accept that X-Men are not in the same continuity as Marvel. They're all Marvel characters.
They're owned by different studios.
They both have Quicksilvers and nobody cared.
Which is exactly sort of my point as well, that you can just put these characters in movies. The thing about this idea of that they have to fit into an established continuity, audiences, first of all, I think it's too confusing for the average audience, and second of all, you can do Elseworlds on a TV show that has a budget of $2 million or an animation. Warner Brothers is never going to make a $100 million Batman Ninja movie that's clearly labeled, or a Gotham by Gaslight movie. They're going to do
They make a $30 million one of those.
Well,
one thing I would also fire off against, since we're tag teaming up on Bibbiani right now, come off the top rope. I think that one of the things you posited, that the Supermans could fight each other and all this jazz.
That's 10 years down the road.
But that's also super unwieldy and never going to happen.
And actors will never sign for that. If I'm Superman, I'm not going to fight another Superman because I want to be the Superman.
Exactly.
It's just never.
You can be the same Superman in both if that's the problem. Who gives a crap? Keep Gal Gadot.
Just to argue for my point, I do believe that my plan could work. You keep what works and eliminate what doesn't. Obviously, them as a giant team doesn't quite work because it looks like you're ham-fisting something that Marvel took 12, 15 years to build. So what you do is stray away from that, use the immense amount of IP, and the one thing I would say is Warner Brothers has no incentive, or should have no incentive, to try to battle Marvel on this front. They have so many other movies that are making so much damn money. I wrote down Crazy Rich Asians, all types of stuff. They're making money hand over fist. Mission Impossible, Lego Movie, American Sniper, Dunkirk, The Meg,
Mission Impossible is Paramount,
whatever. They're making money hand over fist in a certain sort of business that doesn't have anything to do with superheroes. They could drop a cool superhero movie with its own continuity every couple years,
and then if they want to combine them, eventually they can. And they're telling the fans that they are connected in some way.
Without recasting, without doing Elseworlds.
But they're already doing it. They already have two different types of Joker movies with different casts. All I'm saying is we say now that there is a plan, as opposed to there's literally no plan. We're doing whatever the hell we want, and if you like it, tough.
Bibbs, I want you to go ahead and roll this into your final thoughts, please.
One of the problems that people have with superhero movies is that they take a long time to make, and we're stuck with this version of the characters until they stop going. And then if we like them, then we have to get used to saying goodbye. And if we don't like them, we have to wait forever. My version, you get different versions of the characters. You get multiple takes on the DC universe, all existing concurrently. If they fail, they fail. Then we don't make any more of that one. If it all leans towards people only like the Noble Bright versions, that's fine. We'll do that. If they only like the Grimdark versions, we'll do that. But there is a framework in here that is actually part of a plan, as opposed to let's just make them and see what happens.
All right. Thank you, Bibbs. Mark Andreyko, some final thoughts.
The idea that a studio can have a long-term plan and that it works is Marvel's the only example of that ever working. Look at what happens with the Star Wars universe at Disney. Look what's happened with the DC universe. How about you just make it simple and you make good movies that stand on their own? You can bring those characters together later, but don't worry about labeling them and having these through lines of continuity and having to have a pie chart for everything. And I also don't believe that a studio would put the kind of money into, if they're going to make a superhero movie, they're going to make it for a minimum of $150 million. They're not going to do it otherwise. And they're not going to take the risks to make a Ninja Batman movie or Superman and Russia movie. That's why the TV and the animation exists to do that. I just think make good movies. When I go to a restaurant, I want a good meal. I don't want them to tell me that tomorrow's meal is going to be good. Serve me a good meal now.
Thank you, Andreyko. Love a good meal. Ed.
Okay, but this is the line of demarcation between my argument and Andreyko's argument, because I think that needs to be stated.
Yeah.
And it is that I am not advocating recasting and making on the same timeline. I'm not advocating keeping these movies in any way related to what's happening right now. I say take what's going good, the Wonder Womans and about that's about it, and let that run its course until Gal Gadot decides to abdicate the role to somebody. And maybe at that point you can try some greater continuity in the future. But I am saying real deal standalone. Don't recast in this same continuity as Mark had said at the early part of his argument.
Same continuity. I said recast.
I'm saying just you have so much IP. You could do a Blue Beetle movie that has Ted Kord as a mentor for the young kid that has that thing jump on his spine. You could have that as its own $150 million movie dedicated to hitting that market hard and go hard on that. And you could do it with Martian Manhunter, let's say. You could do it with so many other characters. Just go hard with them having their own thing, not comparing them to Superman, not having Superman show up to make Martian Manhunter look stupid. Martian Manhunter in his own movie, Blue Beetle in his own movie, so on and so forth, for years, and let those play out. And then maybe later, the most popular of those can team up in some sort of Flash-related event or whatever you want to do. But standalone for years, not standalone recast, not standalone, not do a bunch of worlds and multiple timelines that everybody's going to be confused by. Standalone individual properties for years.
Time. That is it. That is it.
Plan.
Anything you say now is not going to count.
I think you're great.
Sorry, moot. Shut it down.
Most handsome man at the table.
Shut it down. False. Falsehood. All right, fellas, thank you for great dialogue and just delving into this subject matter. Dan Murrell, facts, thoughts?
This is opinion-based round, so really no facts to check.
Gotcha. All right, so come back to you in just a sec, Dan. So you guys all had some unique pieces to your visions here. Interesting stuff. I feel like ANDREYKO and Ed both teamed up on Bibbs, and
that was mean.
Yeah,
you guys are mean.
It was, but ANDREYKO just hit you early on. I wasn't seeing any recovering in regards to just those elsewhere worlds, and the infinite Earths can work in the comic book, because people will devour that and keep it straight, but movie audiences, I don't think, can make heads or tails with those multiple universes in the one DC universe. So it came down to me, to Ed and Mark, and I think, to me, it was Ed hitting Mark on just like, the audience isn't going to just get on board with willy-nilly casting and playing fast and loose with that. But that seemed to be the clear difference.
Either, but it doesn't matter now, does it, Mark?
Anyway, I'm going Ed. Dan.
I actually completely changed my mind in the course of the closing arguments.
Mm-hmm.
I was leaning towards one competitor, but I think the closing really sewed up for me BIBBIANI's arguments on the Elseworlds, the way that he addressed the fact that this is not just scattershot, that this gives them the flexibility. If there's something that an audience can connect to, they have the freedom to explore more in that direction. If it's not, it's something that they can make its own thing. I felt, to me, it wasn't grabbing me at the beginning, but in the end, I thought it was the most cohesive strategy, and I actually was won over by the closing, so I'm going to go with BIBBIANI.
Right on. Okay, so it's one for Ed, one for Bibbs. Danielle, can you make any sense of this?
I would if everything didn't suddenly just freeze up on my computer at the last second.
Right on, it happens.
The calculator attacks.
Yeah, I'm frozen too.
Oh, tight. But what I will do before I get to that, while we're waiting for our computers to start acting right, on Twitter we had someone, GIT_SHIDDY, I think that's supposed to be get shiddy, said, for some reason, if WB still wants to go with Connected Universe, hire the guy who nailed it for 25 years, Paul Dini.
And Bruce Timm, I would say.
Yeah,
but I think they work together. But
All right, and so we've got the poll back up with 58%. We've got slow build to team up, which was Ed's argument. At 21%, we had time jump, and then at 19%, we had infinite Earths.
All right, so Ed, you take this one. Any dank DC memes?
No, just a lot of really good arguments and opinions. Like I said, go check that out. There are people
Awesome.
having whole movie fights sometimes on Twitter.
That is
between
so great,
themselves,
yeah,
which is
because-
really fun.
Nice. Fight along at home, you guys, because I'm listening to these guys, and it inspires a lot of thought and fun to listen to. So Ed takes a hard-fought, well-won point, and he is up 1-0-0 going into question number 2. Here it is. Dan and I were just talking about this. The Halloween sequel comes out this weekend, so we ask, What's the best movie that inspired the worst franchise? The biggest gulf between the original movie and the sequel wins, okay?
We should note, this is not to say that this new one is bad. It's because this movie exists because the bad. I've heard so much about how I want people thinking I tanked this because I may have disagreed from some other people about this movie. It's because this movie exists, because the sequels were so terrible.
Yes.
That's why we're asking this question, not to say that this one is bad.
Absolutely.
I just want to get in front of it now, Hal.
Yes. No, thank you, because otherwise the internet takes that ball and runs with it.
A whole sidetrack. We don't want to do that.
I hear you. No, very necessary. Thank you for the qualifier, Dan. So again, the best movie that inspired the worst franchise, and we are not casting aspersions on the Halloween film opening up this weekend. All right, this is question 2. Let's start with player 2, Mark Andreyko.
Well, there are lots of movies that were great that became franchises, and the franchises were just spectacularly, dreadfully awful and watchable that way. But the franchise that I picked has a great classic first movie that's a genre starter, that's an amazing film that had the worst franchise sequels because the franchises, they're boring, they're utterly forgettable, they're flat and lifeless, and that's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a terrifying film. People imagine it's bloodier than it is. People imagine it's more graphic than it is, and that's because Tobe Hooper made an amazing film that makes you fill in the blanks. Every single one of those sequels is like a jar of bad mayonnaise. They're uninteresting, they're boring. You have a transvestite chainsaw murderer in your movies. At least make something that's fun and entertaining. All of the sequels get progressively less and less interesting, and they're not even bad. They're not even interesting bad. They're just forgettable, and that's the biggest offense. If I'm going to pay $10, $12 to go see a movie, if you're going to be bad, be spectacularly bad. Be something that I can make fun of, and don't bore me. And I defy anyone to talk about anything good in any of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequels or the execrable remakes.
All right, Mark Andreyko coming in with that chainsaw growling Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Ed.
All right, I picked a movie that came out with a bunch of other 80s action movies, and we're still talking about it in 2018, and that is Predator. And I do believe that Predator spawned the worst franchise that got the farthest away from the first movie, and that's what I'll be arguing today, is that the movies that follow get so far away from the mystique and the magic of the first one that it's insane how far they stray from the original and how simple that story is. It's ridiculous. So I will be arguing on that point, and I think I'm winning that hands down. I will have to argue that my movie is as great as the first movies of these other guys, and I'm prepared to do that as well.
All right, thanks, Ed, for laying it out. Bibbs, what you got?
All right, my pick is one of the best, most important, and most successful motion pictures in all of history. It was a huge monster blockbuster smash. It won an Academy Award, and it spawned sequels that are so bad that, unlike the movies they picked, Universal doesn't even make them anymore, even though it's one of the most famous franchises in history. It's Jaws. That's right, the Killer Shark movie, a brilliant horror movie, an immersive character study, a really interesting indictment of capitalism run amok that spawned 3 abysmal sequels, each one dumber than the last. The first one is a crappy slasher movie with terrible characters. The third one is one of the worst 3D motion pictures ever. The fourth one involves psychic revenge sharks. And they all focus on, it's not just sharks attacking people, it's sharks with a vendetta against one family. It's a story that could have happened to you, and now it can only happen to the Brodies, ruining the franchise forever. Unlike theirs, which are still going, it is dead in the water.
All right, I love these choices. Go to town, you guys.
Well, first of all, Jaws was directed by one of the best directors of all time, Steven Spielberg. So where is it going to go but down?
But I agree. It went way down. You're totally right about that.
The sequels are actually watchable because they're so bad. That 3D movie with Bess Armstrong and Dennis Quaid and a floating fish head and Louis Gossett Jr. fresh off an Oscar. It's a car accident of a movie. It's the mommy dearest of shark films. And Jaws 4, with the shark has a personal vendetta. I'm already interested because that's so stupid.
But that's such a deep fall. That's such a fall from grace.
But they're interesting to watch.
Whereas the Texas Chainsaw movies had the same premise all the way through. Texas Chainsaw 2 is fucking brilliant, sir. I love Texas Chainsaw. I will have none of your Texas Chainsaw 2, Mr. Murphy. That is a descent to hell with chainsaw duels. Trolls. That is a brilliant motion picture.
To Bibbiani's point, Toby Hooper, correct me if I'm wrong, but Toby Hooper directed that second one.
That doesn't mean it's a good movie.
And he has been on record saying that that's kind of what I wanted to do. So to castigate something for, he kind of wanted to do that.
George Lucas made the prequels.
We're not debating that one.
That's
just because the creator wanted to make it doesn't mean it's good.
But we're talking about things that go
movies,
far away from the original concept.
Exactly. And Texas Chainsaw stayed with the original concept. It was a cannibal family all the way through. If all you want is cannibal family kills,
what's the best movie
if all
that
you want
inspired
is
the worst franchise? It's not about continuity.
It is about consistency, though, because what we're talking about is the worst franchise. And what I'm arguing is that at the very least, the Texas Chainsaw movies and the Predator movies stay monster movies. Tough guys versus monsters, cannibal families versus everybody.
Which movies you'd want to watch out of all of these three choices? I would
Texas Chainsaw and Predator. Texas Chainsaw and Predator. Texas Chainsaw 3 has amazing gore. Texas Chainsaw 4 has some of the most absurd, laughable, wonderful, hysterical acting I've ever seen. And the remakes are cool, man.
I gotta get some shots up against these crummy movies and say also what's up with my movies. Now look, Jaws, I would maintain that your assertion that Jaws degenerates into a movie that's about a shark with a vendetta is dumb, because the shark has the whole ocean. It can go anywhere, and it chooses to follow the orca and slam into it at night while they're singing songs and getting drunk and comparing cars.
But that's one shark. I'm talking about every shark in the world.
But even though that movie's so great, it starts out with the shark having a vendetta against people. That's in the very first movie. So
they're chumming the water. That attracts sharks. There's only one shark in the water outside of Amity.
They weren't chumming in the middle of the night, and they got attacked by a shark while they were in a ship.
It's hunting ground. It's moved here. That's the whole point.
They were miles and miles out from its hunting ground. It came into Amity Cove to eat up the
Your argument that Jaws sucks is a bad argument.
You can't argue that, but I would posit also, the thing is, these movies are also genre starters. You guys just said it. That movie was one of the first movies to ever be put in that many theaters at one time. It was bound to be a giant success with a huge director and that sort of release schedule.
At the time.
He was a TV director at the time.
A great director with a lot of, and with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Look, that movie stays much. The Jaws series stays the same. It's a shark versus the Brodies. This in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Are they in Texas? Is there a Leatherface dude? Yeah. Is he killing people and putting skin on his face? Those are the movies. That's
exactly. Hold on, Mark. We need to team up on Predator.
On Predator.
Wait, you've had a long time.
Fine. I'll do why Predator sucks.
The difference between your movie, Predator, and Jaws and Texas Chainsaw Massacres is our movies are actually great movies. Predator is a mediocre action series with a vagina-faced monster that was successful because it was the height of Arnold Schwarzenegger's powers.
I knew you would say that.
And I gotta tell you something. I like the first Predator. I like Predator 2. I like Predators. The Predator is kind of dumb, but it's all in the same vein. They actually kind of waffled around the same basic quality level throughout the entire franchise. Mine dipped immediately. The Jaws movies were so bad that even by the third one, back when they were making money, the studio actually tried to turn it into a comedy called Jaws 3 People Zero because they knew it was stupid. Universal abandoned the Jaws franchise after Jaws the Revenge because it becomes such a joke that even the Back to the Future movies are making fun of it, and the only time the studio has done anything with that property ever since in any sort of cinematic form was to make a parody trailer about how stupid all of their own movies were. They are ashamed of it. They ruined it.
For that very reason, those sequels are so much more watchable because they're so off and so ridiculous, whereas the Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequels are just a bad remix of one great song. They're just fading and boring and uninteresting. Both of these sequels are goofy.
But to both of those points, again, your movies stay much the same, and people start to tire of the way your movies are. Whereas in the Predator, I'll tell you how the Predator got laid out. The first Predator movie is about a hunter who comes to our planet for sport, and he runs into the wrong dudes.
The second movie is about a predator who comes to a city
and runs into the wrong dude.
Yeah,
the third one is about wrong dudes who go to another planet.
Yeah, exactly. That's
the same fucking premise in a different location.
Okay, guys. Ed, want you to finish your point.
You couldn't go farther from the premise if you tried. Going off planet is far away from the premise. They come here. We don't
That's
go
like
there.
saying the Jaws sequels are different because they're different
we
boats.
fight
Yeah,
one.
that's not the- that's not the
There's
issue.
one versus a group of hardcore dudes. Predators is about Topher Grace, who was a serial killer who like poisoned women, and the Predators go hang out in trees watching this dude a whole bunch. That is straying so far from the premise of coming
It's
down
the
here
same
to
premise.
fight
It's
the
just-
baddest dudes on earth. That's
they're
so
just
far.
fighting
Hold on.
evil people and-
The last movie, 11-foot Predator with a Wolverine endoskeleton shooting giant claws at people and trying to steal autistic DNA to enhance his race. That is not dudes fighting dudes in the jungle. That couldn't be farther away
It
from
ends
that.
with dudes fighting dudes in the jungle.
Harvesting
That
our
is-
DNA.
it's a
They be
simple
like Michael
premise.
Jordan
What if-
harvesting your
what if
DNA
humans
for
got
$3.
predator
We can't have
It's so
talking
stupid.
over.
All I'm saying is, it's them coming here to harvest our DNA was the premise of the Predator. That is so stupid and so far from them coming to kill us for sport. Them harvesting our DNA to enhance them. That is so far from
They
the
are
original
still
premise.
hunting us for
Yes.
sport. That's the entire point, is that they're finding out who is the most evolved on this planet, who is the strongest DNA on this planet. It's the same basic premise. We just learned a little bit more about it. Going off to another planet is no different than going to Los Angeles. It's just a different geographic location for the exact same story. The Predator movie stayed consistent. The Texas Chainsaw movie stayed relatively consistent because, again, it's still the same premise all the time. The Jaws movies got progressively dumber every single time, and they had to bend over backwards just to make something that even made the modicum of sense for the shark to be
The
attacking the
shark
birdies
breaches
again.
unnaturally 3 out of 4 movies. 3 out of 4 movies, the shark breaches unnaturally, exposes the big shark tank, gets blown up.
Exactly,
jumps up,
they're
gets
all
stabbed by a
awful.
boat,
They're
gets blown
all
up.
awful. That's why I'm
the
arguing
same
that they're
thing
the
in
worst
3 out of
sequels.
4 movies. How is that not
It's-
consistent?
it's-
How is that not
because it's
consistent?
not the first one. We talked about the difference between the
Let's
first one and the
pause right
sequels.
here, and we're going to start with Mark ANDREYKO. Let's hear your final thoughts.
As we can see from this argument, the Jaws sequels are spectacularly awful and watchable because they're so ill-conceived. The Predator movies were the original one's not a great movie to begin with. It's not a classic. It's a B-movie classic at best. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequels, no one talked about here except me and Bibb saying they're all the
I
same.
liked them.
But they're just bad Xeroxes of mimeographs. They're just pale imitations, and they're boring and they're forgettable. And I think this argument proved that that's the worst kind of franchise, a boring, forgettable one.
Thank you, Mark. Ed Greer.
What Mark just said about Texas Chainsaw is why it's disqualified. People got tired of, I'm going to trip on a branch and get stabbed with a chainsaw. People got tired of that as a genre. No matter how you repackage it, no matter how much you did, people got tired of that. Homeboy's shark movie. Okay, in the 70s, you see a moderately realistic shark chomping up people. It sets the world on fire. The next time, not so much. The next time, they got to spruce it up with 3D. The last time, they got to make it a personal story in the Bahamas. So I get what you guys are saying, that they're so bad, but mine started out as so-called B-movie classic. It's McTiernan at the height of his powers, right before Die Hard. It's Schwarzenegger at the height of his powers, arguably, and it's a so-called B-movie that we're talking about 30 years later. That is the definition of classic. Okay? So, and then you see that original concept gets polluted by them harvesting our DNA, them taking us to their planet, predator dogs, 11-foot predators that hunt other predators. It gets so far from the central premise of the original movie and so much worse than the premise of the original movie that it's qualitatively worse than a movie that stays the same with dumb sharks breaching and a movie that stays the same with Leatherface chopping. It's qualitatively worse.
Thank you, Ed. Pencil down. Bibbs.
Okay, one at a time. The Texas Chainsaw movies are not nearly as bad as ANDREYKO says they are. They are consistently violent, cynical, mean-spirited motion pictures. Many of them are very entertaining because and/or in spite of themselves. They are consistent in tone and content. The Predator movies, consistent in tone of content. Badasses fighting monsters. What both of those franchises have in common is that even after sequels that some people don't like, they're still making those sequels. The Jaws movies, all of which made money, even the worst ones, got canceled by their own studio because it was an embarrassment to them. And even though we are still talking about Jaws and we are still celebrating Jaws way more than we're celebrating Predator even to this day, Jaws is dead. That's the difference. My movies took a huge shot in quality because it was a shark movie. It was something that could happen to anybody who went to the beach, and it turned into something that could only happen to the Brody family because magic sharks. All those sharks breaching you were talking about, that was the sequels. You made my point for me. The sequels were a massive step down, every single one of them, but especially the fourth.
Thank you, Bibbs. Time. Boom. Dan Murrell, please, facts, and your thoughts on the argument, sir.
I mean, factually, everything's checked out. Again, this is mainly opinion-driven, so the Oscar facts were correct. Bibbiani's right. Every Jaws sequel at least doubled its budget, if not far more, even Jaws 3, which is many people, I think, consider possibly a flop. Financially was not that, so that checks out. Yeah.
Cool. Please, give us your thoughts on this round.
A very spirited debate, to say the least.
Absolutely.
Important issues.
I think
I love the passion. I love you guys bringing it.
I feel like Ed got lost in the weeds a little bit. His argument was very much about the Stray. Was it different? And then mine was consistent in what it did, but that wasn't what's the most consistent franchise as far as tone. It wasn't what franchises had the stayed the same the most throughout its run. It was like best movie that spawned the worst franchise. And the person that answered that question most consistently for me was Bibbiani. Best movie in Jaws, worst franchise in the sequels. That was the argument that I think answered the question the best for me, and that's where I'm going to put my vote.
Dan, I am just almost in lockstep with you here. I felt everybody got bogged down by like, oh, yours strayed from the spirit of the first movie. Like, that doesn't matter. It was about the best movie that inspired the worst franchise. There's nothing about, is it consistent? Is it canon? Is it like, so, and we got some knocks against ANDREYKO, because ANDREYKO, I loved your opening argument, but then just talking about Tobe Hooper and his vision for the second one, that kind of really pulled away from me. This had nothing to do with your argument, Ed, but you don't get stabbed with a chainsaw, you get chopped the F up with a chainsaw. I feel like Bibbiani, and it doesn't help me that it's so bad it's good. That's like, ooh, here's, I guess, a consolation prize at the end of a crappy road, you know? So to that, Bibbs gets the point. Danielle, what'd the poll say?
All right, we had Jaws at 69%.
69, bro!
I was really hoping it was still going to be 70 when I said
Wild
it.
stuff.
15% for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 14% for Predator. In the chat and on Twitter, some of the other more popular choices were Jurassic Park, Silence of the Lambs, and The Land Before... I wrote The Land Before Tim. The Land Before Time.
Oh, that would have been a good one.
Before Tim.
That would have been a good one. That's a good
Dark
idea.
Age before Tim.
That's a good one.
But we have one tweet that I really appreciated from David Pockets 90. The Matrix has the worst franchise. That first film was a masterpiece. The sequels became boring and were too heady for its own good. It's like if you were to try to remake an Ex Machina sequel.
Ooh, yeah. Great answers. One that I was additionally thinking, The Exorcist.
Yeah.
The Exorcist spawned some bad movies.
It was between The Exorcist, Die Hard, and Jaws for me.
Right
Those are my
on.
three.
Yeah, Die Hard's a toughie because there's a couple good
Some
ones
of
in
them are
there.
okay,
but all right.
It's a good choice.
So, we have one for Ed, one for William. Mark ANDREYKO, strong arguments, but looking to get on the board. Question number 3. Oh, it's a blind fight! Look out!
You okay, Dan?
You all done? You all done, Hal?
All right.
Okay.
Here we go.
The owl won that one.
Yes. All right. So this is a blind fight. We'll let you pick, and don't look at your piece of paper yet. Mark, you can pick first since you've not gotten on the board. Ed. Here you go. I'll read the question, and then we'll go around and hear the answers, starting with Ed. We'll hear what you have. Okay, the question. Tom and Jerry, the Flintstones, and Scooby-Doo are all getting new movies. Joy! Pitch the dark and gritty adaptation of the Hanna-Barbera property you chose. Okay? Pitch a dark, gritty adaptation of your Hanna-Barbera property. All right? So let's just go around and hear what movie you got. Ed?
Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry. All right. Bibbs?
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo. And Mark? The Flintstones. Okay, so take a moment, think about it, and then we're going to jump in here and hear some pitches and go round and round. So since it is question number 3, we will start with a pitch from player number 3. And because you're coming up with all of this right now, you can have addendums to your pitches, and I don't expect you to be full stop after your opening salvo.
Right.
Ed.
Well, my movie starts in an alley. There's cats. There's cats all around. Cats on fences yowling, and there's some kittens, and most of the kittens are dead.
Sorry.
But one cat is still alive. His name, Tom. Tom is a survivor from the get-go. He clings to his mother. He clings to his mother like a possum or something like that. And then a mouse. They see a mouse, and they're starving in an alley, so they decide to approach the mouse, but the mouse kills Tom's mom. The mouse has inhuman strength. Maybe it ate some spinach or whatever. Jerry used to do in some of those cartoons where he would get buff, and Tom is left with a dead mom and a mouse with his mom's blood on its mouth that's glaring and laughing at him. And then the mouse goes and lives in a house or whatever, and Tom eventually gets put in a barrel of kittens and ends up at that house. So he's in the house with his mom's murderer. And he tries, and he tries, and he tries every day to kill this mouse who killed his mom. And he can't do it because the mouse is so cartoon prepared for all of his attacks. And it's like a horror movie. It's a horror movie. It's like Heredity or something.
Wow. Man, strong stuff right out of the gate from Ed Greer. Back around to Bibbs.
Oh my God, sorry. That was fundamentally ridiculous.
All right.
Okay, all right. Picture it. You got a van full of drug addicts driving across America.
Yeah, man.
Solving one serial killer after another. Just going to town where people are being brutally dismembered and disemboweled and having their heads cut off. And somehow, in the midst of this is set in the 1960s, by the way. So there's somehow these Manson family kids are driving across America, finding out all of these horrible murders, getting involved in terrible orgies and blood cults. And they have a dog, but when they're high, the dog talks to them and tells them to do things. And it's basically them solving mysteries. This one kind of writes itself. It's Scooby-Doo. It was always about people solving horrible crimes perpetrated by monsters. So this is the dark David Fincher fucked up version of it. Just give me a check. I'll make it tomorrow.
All right. Bibbs coming in with the darker version of Scooby-Doo. ANDREYKO, what do you got?
Well, actually, the version of the Flintstones I would make to make a dark, deep R-rated one would be based loosely on the DC comic book they just did. A guy named Mark Russell wrote it, and it was kind of the Flintstones as Mad Men, or as I would subtitle it, Glengarry Glen Rock. You would have you do a social commentary with the veneer of prehistoric ages about women's issues, about the wives wanting to work, about Fred not being able to do his job, about being sabotaged by the guy that owns the quarry. You have him competing with Barney, who's his best friend, but Barney's actually sleeping with Wilma because Fred is impotent, both at his job and in bed. You don't know. You have a paternity issues with Pebbles and Bam Bam. Are they actually half brother and sister, and they're in love? You have all this social, gritty, character-driven stuff that could be directed by a Scorsese in his Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore phase, or Scorsese in his Casino phase. There's so many ways to go with this, and it's an Oscar bait movie because it's taking something. It's like the Dark Knight of Flintstones movies. You're taking this source material that's kind of jokey and making actual valid social commentary about how we all interact and how we haven't evolved at all in all these years.
All right, good stuff, you guys. Let's fight this out.
Okay, Mad Men is not gritty. What you have described is a story about real life, but they're cavemen. That was always the Flintstones. You're creating the social satire. It's ordinary cavemen. cave people. I'm not saying that's a bad movie. What I'm saying is that is not gritty. That is just a serious drama about cave persons.
Incestuous Bubbles and Bam Bam being in love and not knowing their brother and sister.
Godfather Part 3 already had the incest. Boom, Oscar nominated
if we're
movie,
talking about
not
stuff
gritty.
that already did it better, Venture Brothers did your pitch better when they posited that the Scooby-Doo gang were actually the murderers who they were looking for, which you missed. And I'm sorry, them going around makes it an infinitely lighter movie because they're surviving these adventures ostensibly. So I would say mine is darker than both of those because it inverts the cat and mouse paradigm. We talk about cultural commentary, and yes, I understand yours being a Glengarry Glen Ross. You know, I make 87,000 rocks a year. That's my name. I get that.
See, you wouldn't see my movie.
But it's not particularly gritty or hardcore as mine.
Okay, well, first off,
but-
you assume my ending because over the course of my film, most of them will die. So there you go. But as for your inverted cat and mouse thing, cats are always cute. Mice are always cute. You've still got a cat and mouse movie. And if you are horrifically violent to them, what you've really done is make a movie called Trigger Warning that no one's ever going to want to see. So that movie is not going to, not only is it not going to get made, no one's going to like it.
Well, I would argue, too, that Jerry wins more than Tom in those cartoons. So we've already seen that. We've already seen the mouse trump the cat all the time.
Well, mine's a story of triumph
And
because
you
he's
never
going to
explained-
win in the
Triumph
end.
isn't gritty. Triumph is very
of course,
empowering.
Well, a lot of movies end with a little bit of triumph and a little bit of a bittersweet
Not
triumph.
mine. Mine is like almost American Beauty-esque at the end with Fred. Fred's probably going to get killed in mine.
Mine is Zodiac,
That's
but
dark.
with teenagers.
I mean, in the caveman days, most couplings are probably on some level incestuous because they didn't know the rules yet.
Well, we're not
so
playing
you're not transgressive.
Don't bring
in that. That's just-
verisimilitude into mine. If you're having a cat,
Put that on a shirt.
cat stalking a mouse.
Don't bring verisimilitude into this.
I mean, if that's the rule, yours doesn't work because cats and mice don't know each other, and they're like the shark in Jaws. There's no personal vendetta amongst animals.
Both of your versions of it are going to turn off everybody who ever liked the original series. Mine, there's actually like an actual canon of people who take Scooby-Doo seriously. Back in the old days,
Well, those
Scooby-Doo
people are crazy.
was about Scooby-Doo fighting criminals, actual criminals. All we're doing is saying that now the murders are 100% real. That is an actual structure that works totally fine. We've got a potential franchise of serial killer
The question
monsters.
wasn't, though, pitch a gritty crowd-pleasing franchise.
Well, I'm sorry. I think it's implied that it should be watchable and good.
Yes, but what he said about yours is not very different from the actual core
They didn't
concept.
say different. They just said gritty. All you got to do
but
is grit it up.
mine-
Mine writes itself
mine is
because it's
infinitely
already
gritty.
a
Mine is
series of
so
horrible
mine.
history.
Okay,
But
okay,
it's
okay.
not gritty. It's just ordinary
it's
cave people.
dark.
But mine is infinitely more gritty than both of yours on that criteria because, of course, Tom doesn't win. Jerry comes out of the rubble or something. But the bottom line is, because we need to have more movies if it's successful. So the bottom line is...
Go ahead and spin this as your final thoughts.
Mine is gritty because in the original, it was cartoon violence perpetrated in the exact way that you'd like to see. The cat is the aggressor, beating up the mouse for no reason. The mouse using his underdog powers, his Rudy-esque underdog powers to beat up the cat. Okay.
There's so many
stretch.
Ryan's final thoughts.
In my movie, the cat has a real reason, a real vendetta, and is trapped with his tormentor. He is trapped with this person who has totally wronged him. It's like Kill Bill. You know what I mean? I've made Tom and Jerry into sort of a Kill Bill situation where Beatrix Kiddo has almost no chance of beating her adversary. That to me is 100% grittier than something that's very much like a regular Scooby-Doo thing and worse than the Venture Brothers thing. And also, I mean, you're describing America. I do agree with Bibbiani on that point. You're describing America.
Have you been to America? It's pretty gritty right now.
Time. All right.
Wait.
Oh no, sorry.
Yeah.
On your final thoughts.
okay.
Yeah.
Back around to Bibbs.
Okay, what you have just described once again is a story of an adorable cat overcoming adversity. That's not that gritty. You can make it a little bit more violent, but it's still the cat overcoming adversity and being adorable in the process. What I have here is an already existing framework for a series of crime solvers going and fighting masked murderers who are killing people everywhere they go. They're all drug addicts. I mean, I've seen how they act and how they dress, and they think their dog is talking to them. It is creepy already. You have one of the darkest potential and most frankly satisfying reboots of all that we're talking about, because being gritty is one thing. We can all just say everyone's getting stabbed in the head in every scene. It does need to be a real movie. Mine is a real movie. Mine wins.
Okay, thank you, Bibbs. Mark ANDREYKO.
the Scooby-Doo movies just are rating the cartoon. It's not really changing it at all or making it all that gritty. It's just extrapolating on what's already there. This movie, because as Bibb said, you sold it as a story of a cat overcoming adversity. If you had sold it as this cat is being stalked by this mouse that wants to destroy his family, that's a little darker for me. That the way you pitched it felt a little positive. Mine is a commentary about today and how dark the world is and how things never change, and you have character darkness. Gritty doesn't just mean it's raining all the time and it's in dark alleys. Gritty can be an internal thing, and this is taking what is basically was a Honeymooners ripoff in the time when it was created and making it something, like I said, Glengarry Glen Rock or an American Beauty, and taking these characters and going to a really dark place that is within all of us. I think it's far more relatable, far more resonant, and far more scary.
Time. All right, there we go.
And Beauty. It was right there and you missed it.
We heard some dark and gritty adaptations. I just want to give a shout out to Gritty, the red-bearded Philadelphia Flyers mascot. Shout out to internet sensation and meme love child Gritty. Okay, Dan,
Yes, sir.
what are you thinking?
A couple of things factually.
Yes.
There was it was brought up by Ed or posited how did Jerry get strong in the cartoons? I found one episode where Tom tries to poison him.
Yes.
It's already kind of dark. Jerry drinks it and gets super strong. Jerry also has a cousin who is very strong named Muscles Mouse.
Oh, I remember Muscles Mouse. Yeah, Muscles Mouse is cool.
Two super strong options for Jerry, and also Mr. Slate is the boss at the quarry.
Yes.
I was thinking Mr. Spacely.
Yeah, Spacely Sprockets. Yeah.
Mr. Slate is the quarry master.
Nicely done. Thank you for being on top of that, sir. Okay, so we had some strong arguments all around. Yeah, Andreyko, you started to win me over in your final argument, but it felt a little too late because it just felt a little bit like you brought American Beauty into it. There's so many different genres. I feel like just the dark grittiness wasn't on lockdown there. So for me, it came down to Ed and Bibbs. And Bibbs, I freaking loved yours, but then I felt like you were just like, oh, we'll just go darker than the TV show, that as opposed to Ed, who broke down a more complete, specific story for me. And yeah, that scene in the alley was gritty AF, so I'm going Ed. Dan.
I'm going a different way.
Yeah.
I felt like Ed and BIBBIANI both pitched certainly darker adaptations of their cartoons, but I was very impressed with Mark's. Not only was it dark, it's certainly very dark and gritty, but a reimagining as well. And I felt I'm going to reward the originality, and that's one of our metrics on the show is originality, and I appreciated that. You had me at Glengarry Glen Rock.
Yeah,
you openly said it came from a comic.
I know. I'm joking.
Yours came from the episodes of the show. You just
all right.
it.
But I liked Mark's pitch, and so I'm going with Mark.
Right on. Okay, so we got Mark and Ed with 1-1. Danielle, can you make heads or tails?
All right. Well, with 47%, we have got the Flintstones, 35% for Scooby-Doo, and 17% for Tom and Jerry. I think Cats bummed out the chat. I think Dead Kittens was. I think it made the chat too bummed.
You can't kill kittens.
The chat was very sad. And in fact, at Sarah Wendling on Twitter said, the fact that at the moment Ed's pitch is at 0% gives me hope for the world. I love Ed, but Dead Kittens, F no.
It's supposed to be gritty for Christ.
That should be a shirt. Dead Kittens, F no.
All right, so that means we are tied up at 1-1-1. These three gentlemen came to play. This is a tiebreaker. Ladies and gents, this is a great moment in sports. So here we go. We've been talking all day about the Halloween offering coming to theaters this weekend. So that gets us to our tie-break question. And before I give you that question, just a reminder how it works. You'll get 20 seconds each to answer, and then 10 seconds each to rebut, and then we will choose who did not move on. And Danielle will chime in with her own opinion this time around. Oh, Danielle, come on. You can do it. So again, first person to answer, and then the subsequent order. That is the order you will be elaborating on your answers in. Here is the actual question. So with Halloween returning to theaters, what's the best John Carpenter movie?
Halloween.
Escape from New York.
The Thing.
All right. Halloween, Escape from New York, and The Thing. Shout out to Danny Petruska. All right. We heard Halloween from Mark, then Ed, then Bibbs. Okay? 20 seconds, and then you'll each get a 10-second rebuttal. Mark, 20 seconds begins whenever you speak.
The first Halloween is a genre starter. That's why we're having sequels 40 years later. The movie was made for next to no money. It was the first use of a Steadicam in a major motion picture. And with that score, it's classic. It is a terrifying movie that I think is arguably one of the most scary movies ever made in American history, right up there with Psycho. It's elegant, it's simple, it gives depth to characters, not necessarily super deep, but deeper than your average horror film.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Ed Greer, Escape from New York.
Escape from New York to me is a huge one in Carpenter's canon. It has the electro synth score. It has the lone hero against stuff, and it's one of the only movies that I can see. It got a sequel. That yeah. It shows you how powerful the first one was, that Escape from LA was so stupid and execrable. I do believe that it's man versus a whole city.
Bibbs.
The Thing is one of the scariest movies ever made, and unlike Halloween, which is a great slasher, The Thing is also one of the most inventive movies ever made, with monsters that have never been seen before, on camera, looking more convincing than anyone's ever seen. We have a cast of entirely believable characters going through an unbelievably apocalyptic scenario, which still terrifies people to this day. Some people prefer Rob Zombie's Halloween. Nobody prefers the new version of The Thing.
Okay, 10-second rebuttals. Mark, Ed, then Bibbs. Mark?
I would argue that all three of these movies are very good, but those two would never have been made if he had made Halloween first. Halloween proved what he could do with no money, so when he was given a little bit of money, he made these great movies. It's an embarrassment of riches.
Ed.
Escape from New York is an original work, whereas I do believe The Thing is based upon another movie done by Howard Hawks a long time ago. So it had that going for it as far as that structure, as far as it being the scariest thing of all time.
Bibbs.
Nobody's arguing what movie came first. The Thing is better. Escape from New York is not that original. It is a sci-fi western. The Thing took an original concept and turned something original out of it and made something entirely new out of something familiar.
Okay, woo! So, who does not move on?
Yeah,
Danielle Radford, be mean to someone.
We're all right. Okay.
Oh, Hal, I love you, you hateful, hateful man.
What would I do?
Guys, please.
Sorry, all of these were really good and compelling arguments. I have to say, in this case, the weakest argument for me, and this is by a hair, was Ed's. So Ed would not be moving on.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that, but just by the hair. I mean, ANDREYKO, you won it for me. Mm-hmm. Ed,
The Thing is a better movie, and he argued better. I have no arguments.
These are all
against
great
that.
films. We all agree.
This was
all
Sophie's
right,
triplets.
Ed, well fought as always.
That was super fun, guys.
Yeah.
That was.
Over there, there we go.
Your argument about a
Give you
remake.
a salute.
No,
If I had to lose to two guys, these guys are great.
And once again, it comes down to me and you.
Like, I can't remember enjoying listening to all three of our combatants argue so much. Well played. Now we
We've
are
all been
headed.
here before, so
Quick
it's kind of
fact
an
check,
insult.
Hal.
What's that?
A quick fact check.
Yes,
before we
please,
get-
sorry.
Halloween was not the first film to use the Steadicam. It was used in Bound for Glory. It was used in Rocky. It predated Halloween by a couple years. So just
What?
small fact check.
Dan, nicely done.
Take the job
Quickest
seriously.
fact-checking fingers in the West. Appreciate that, sir. Also, shout out to my favorite John Carpenter, They Live.
We're living that right now.
Yes.
Yeah, that's America.
They currently live.
We're living it.
All right, here we go. That did not count for a point. We are tied up at 1-1. This is the speed round. Same rules as our tie-break round apply. Mark ANDREYKO, William Bibbiani, good luck to you both.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Here we go. In honor of JTE, Rambo 5, The Savage Hunt, was originally about Rambo fighting a monster. What monster should Rambo fight in a movie?
Jason Voorhees.
The xenomorph from Alien.
Jason Voorhees, the xenomorph. All right, we heard Jason Voorhees from Bibbs first. Bibbs, 20 seconds begins when you speak.
Rambo is a human killing machine in the woods. Jason is an undead human killing machine in the woods. What we have is two people who are on their home territory, one of whom cannot be killed, and the other whom cannot be killed through force of mere plot. So what we're doing is we're having the ultimate showdown, even more than Freddy versus Jason, which had to contrive the plot out the yin-yang. We just have Jason and Rambo hacking each other to death with machetes. Who wins?
All right. ANDREYKO.
Since we really don't like Sylvester Stallone to have too much dialogue, we want to have him fight something that doesn't have any dialogue either, and that is the xenomorph. Him fighting Jason is it's a Rocky movie with two zombies beating each other up. Him chasing an alien through the woods and fighting in the woods, the action scenes could be great, and him breaking the tail off. And I mean, just think of Rambo wrapping an alien tail around his head after he kills one of them.
Yeah, let's think about him wrapping an alien tail around his head and then dissolving from the acid. The alien is way too overpowered for Rambo. It's going to make an entire army of monsters out of it. And no, that doesn't sound fun. That just sounds like it's going to be really stupid to see Rambo survive.
As opposed to Jason, who he's going to chop up and he's going to come back and he's going to come back. And Rambo's smart enough that he would drain the blood out of the tail before he tied it around his head. He fought in Nam. He knows how to fight
Xenomorphs in Nam.
Time.
Fought Xenomorphs in Nam. That's great.
He fought in Nam so he could fight a xenomorph. All right, let's start with Dan Murrell.
Listen, I thought Bibbiani had it. I thought he had a great counter argument, but ANDREYKO brings up the jungle warfare and Nam and the fact that Rambo would be smart enough to avoid a huge mistake like that. And I liked the idea of the change of not just fighting a person in the jungle, he's fighting this other entity in the jungle. Mark won me over. That last counter argument put me over to Mark's side. I got to go with Mark.
One for Mark. Danielle?
I have to absolutely agree. Although I will say Mark had me at two woodsy killing machines versus each other, and then that last thing just kind of clenched it for me, so I got to go with Mark.
Semper Fi.
Yep, two woodsy killing machines. Hope no owls are hurt in that battle. Here we go. Question number 2. Mark ANDREYKO is up 2-1. Mark ANDREYKO is up 2-1. First to four. Oh, you tales of a fourth grade nothings. Judy Blooms. Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. Has been optioned for a movie. What other classic children's book should be adapted for film? Judy Blooms, are you there? God, it's me, Margaret.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this another Judy Bloom book or any children's literature?
Any. What other classic children's book should be adapted for film?
Encyclopedia Brown.
Okay.
I'm worried I might be getting the title slightly wrong on this, but it's My Substitute Teacher is an Alien. You remember that one? My Teacher is an Alien?
My Teacher is an Alien.
My Teacher is an Alien.
Yes, that is the correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, not to be confused with Kim Basinger and My Stepmother is an Alien. All right. Not that anyone at all confused that. Mark ANDREYKO was first with Encyclopedia Brown. Bibbs, you're on deck. Mark, 20 seconds begin when you speak.
Encyclopedia Brown is like a serial killer procedural sort of thing, but on a kid's level. You do what like a younger version of what they did with Brick. You take these classic noir things and do it in a kid's way, and you're not only making these cool mysteries that kids can solve. It's empowering kids. It's making the kids active and making them showing kids can be smart in movies, not making them just killer bait or victims or just dummies.
Bibbs.
My Teacher is an Alien gets into the head of every kid who feels like their teacher doesn't like them, doesn't understand them, and literalizes it, creating a horror movie that kids can love, that is full of great monster effects. And if you read the whole series, it actually goes in really unexpected directions and builds to a really satisfying conclusion. This is something kids can understand, parents will enjoy. It's scary, but it's appropriate for everybody. And such.
10-second rebuttals.
One, I've never heard of this book, so I can't qualify that it's a classic. But with Encyclopedia Brown, you're building a Sherlock Holmes franchise for kids. You're exploring different mysteries. You can actually teach them different things about investigation in these different movies.
Insufferable Child, the movie. You want to see a kid who's a know-it-all and just solves every problem, and only kids could ever possibly like that, and even then, only kids who like boring mysteries, because I've read Encyclopedia Brown.
Time. All right. Woo. This was a fine collision and both interesting tomes to explore. But yeah, you had me with the opening argument. I never heard anything that surpassed that, Mark, with the noirish feel and making kids smarter. Let's encourage learning. I love that. So Mark gets my point. Dan Murrell.
Yeah, this was neck and neck for me because I think that both Mark and Bibbs both argued why their choice was for kids, but in different ways. So it's hard to qualify those arguments against each other. I guess I felt like Mark was a little stronger in his counter argument, so I'm also going to go with Mark.
All right, Mark.
You had a
up
counter?
3-1. Okay.
Also, I mean, Insufferable Child, the movie, that's just the Veronica Mars series, and I loved that.
Yeah, when he's 8. All right.
Okay, so this is game point for Mark Andreyko. Bibbs, you need this to keep this game going.
Dear
Ed,
God.
Thoughts?
I'm drawing a picture of Batman. No.
Oh, really?
Hell yeah. Let's see. Can you show it to the camera?
No. Here it is. There it is. But it's just the cowl. It's not done.
Respect his art.
No. Anyway,
Awesome.
No, stop it. No, but honestly,
You get the point.
I need it. No, these guys, honestly, this is a tour de force. I'm really enjoying this. People at home in the chat are probably looking at me actually smiling for the first time since I've been defeated. Usually I sit here glowering, super angry, but I'm like entertained by the people who remain. So
Right
this
on.
is classic.
That's good art. Just, man. A man of many talents, Ed Greer. Here we go. This is question number 3 of the speed round. Game point for Andreyko right here. What actor should play your opponent in a biopic of their life?
Wow.
What actor should play your opponent in a biopic?
Paul Giamatti.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
I think you should get the point.
Mark Andreyko cedes the point. Thank you.
I do not.
He does not. Okay. It was merely jesting. Okay, so Mark, you chimed in first with Paul Giamatti. Bibbs on deck with Daniel Day. All right, 20 seconds.
I think we would both acknowledge that neither one of us should be the leads in movies. We're character actors in real life. And a character actor who reminds me of Bibbs is Paul Giamatti because he's a very specific type. He rubs some people the wrong way. Some people love him, but he's always playing characters who fight to the death for the courage of their convictions, which I think is the most admirable quality about him, even though I don't necessarily agree with him most of the time. And I think Paul Giamatti...
I think we are the stars of our own story, and I think you deserve the best star in the world, the greatest actor in the world, a chameleon who will become you, who will understand you, and who will present your tale to the entire world, someone who will get inside the complex head of Mark Andreyko and understand all these weird opinions that I disagree with. I think I would understand Daniel Day-Lewis's version of you better than I understand you.
I would agree, but Daniel Day-Lewis has officially retired from acting, and I don't think he's going to come out to play me. I think Paul Giamatti in Sideways, the comic book nerd horror movie version of you, would actually be made.
Your only counter argument is pragmatism, which is Daniel Day-Lewis is retired. He can come out of retirement. Paul Giamatti isn't going to get young enough to play me because he is older than me. Daniel Day-Lewis isn't that much older than you.
Time. Woo!
I have no idea if that's true.
I'm so pissed I don't get to respond to that. I had so many good lines.
What a magical casting dreamscape this is.
That turned into a love fest.
Who came up with this question? This is a great question.
adorable.
This is one of my favorite speed round questions in recent memory.
It is a good speedrun question.
That turned into more of a toast than a roast.
Respect, a little sportsmanship. Danielle.
Both of these are great pitches. I would watch legit both of these movies. I do have to say that just the line about always playing a character who fights to the death on his convictions for Paul Giamatti, that line really spoke with me. So I've got to go with Mark's beautiful way to describe you.
Am I gonna lose based on the greatest compliment of my life?
I think so.
Yes, I think you are. Because that and then Mark came through with Mark pierced the air with specificity. You had a little bit more of a general answer, so Mark really spoke to me with his answer. Mark Andreyko, you win today's movie fights.
I finally beat you.
Hey, congratulations.
Wow! What? Oh man!
You earned it. You earned it. With that glowing
guys-
praise of me, you earned it.
This was fantastic. Just so much fun to listen to you guys regale us with your arguments. Mark, you took the day. Please give us some shout-outs. Tell us where we can find you. Whatever you like.
Well, if you're in Los Angeles, this Saturday we're doing the Tournament of the Nerds Halloween edition with
Heck yes.
with Method Man and Doug Benson
Yeah,
and a bunch
Ben
of
Garant from Reno 911.
$5 tickets, midnight UCB. I'm also currently writing Supergirl for DC Comics that's
Yep.
spinning out of Brian Bendis' Spider-Man. And then I have another couple projects that'll be announced soon. One I wrote the idea for 25 years ago, so I'm glad it's finally going to happen. But that'll be announced before Christmas. So, and you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook. But if you don't like politics, don't bother.
I can vouch for that. It gets really political on Mark Andreyko's Facebook. Thank you, Mark. Well fought. Ed, always great having you in here, my man.
It was really fun. Even in defeat, it was really fun.
You were a tough opponent.
I feel like I wrapped the alien head around my head too soon, and I melted myself a couple times. But you guys are great competitors. Ed Greer, you can see some of my finished art on Ed Greer Destroys, my Instagram. And Ed Greer Destroys is also my Twitter handle. And you can listen to me and my friend Ron Swallow talk about the people's favorite fictional characters of all time. They're Nerd Goat on my podcast, Nerd Goat, which you can get on Stitcher and Libsyn and iTunes and all that.
Oh, heck yes.
Yeah, we're a 5-star rated podcast, and we just talk to interesting people about who their favorite fictional character of all times is. Deep
awesome.
dives, and it's pretty cool. I'd like to have everybody on this panel.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Anytime. Anytime.
Cool.
Ed, thank you, sir. Bibbs, you brought it as per usual, and your passion
With
is
one point.
Your passion is infectious. Please tell us where we can find you and plug some stuff.
Okay, so I'm a film critic. I write for The Wrap and IGN, and you can find links to all my work on criticallyacclaimed.net. I co-host the critically acclaimed podcast on the Schmoes Know iTunes feed. It's also on Stitcher, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We review new movies, and we do a double feature every single week of a good movie and a really bad movie that goes along with it very well. But throughout the month of October, we're reviewing entire horror movie franchises. We just finished reviewing all the Blade films, and then this weekend we're going to be reviewing all of the Hannibal Lecter movies. I also co-host the Canceled Too Soon podcast, in which we review TV shows that lasted only one season or less. It is Scary-tober, so we're reviewing a bunch of horror-themed shows. We just did the 1990s reboot of Dark Shadows. Tomorrow we are coming out with a review of Elvira's failed sitcom show, which is basically Bewitched, but with Elvira. And
so good.
and then later we're going to be doing Kolchak the Night Stalker. And then in November we're doing a marvelous month of Marvels, where it's nothing but failed Marvel Comics television shows, of which there are about 1 billion. If you want to contribute to that and get a ton of exclusive content, patreon.com/canceled too soon. Canceled is spelled with 1 L because it is.
All right. Thank you, Bibbs, and always great to have you, brother.
Thank you, you too.
Dan Murrell, anything factual going on in your shout-outs or upcoming events?
I will say that I briefly thought that Mark Andreyko had written a weed comic, because when he said, he had an idea that I wrote the idea for 25 years ago. I thought he said, I wrote the idea for 25 years ago. And I was like, Andreyko
that's
doing
the
a weed
sequel.
comic.
That's cute.
All
That's
right. So that's just my lack of understanding sometimes.
Right on. Also, you are always #420 friendly.
Oh, you know me.
Yeah.
Always high.
No one smokes as much weed as Dan Murrell.
Notorious podcast.
Notorious podcast. Dan Murrell. A lot of people in the comments the last couple of days have asked me if I was high based on some of my opinions. But
Right
the
on.
answer is no, not currently.
Venom is a good movie, and you're right about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dan's a clean teen.
I would continue carrying on from last week. There are still a lot of people in Florida that need help in the Panhandle and other areas north and east of there. So whichever charity you deem is the one that you would like to provide your money to, UNICEF, Red Cross, whoever, please consider helping out, because there's a lot of people in need, and who will continue to be in need in the next weeks and months to come.
Heck yeah, thank you for reminding us about some important real-world stuff that's happening. Danielle, what do you got?
Follow me on Danielle Radford on Twitter. I have a podcast where I talk a lot about wrestling, if only so I don't annoy Spencer in the writer's room with it. Poor guy, he got us started today. Me and Joe, it was bad. So it's called Titan Fights. It's on the Max Fun Network. You can find me on Instagram, Danielle_Radford. I have a Patreon now, so if you really like my wrestle yelling and you would like more of it, you can give money for that if you have a chance.
Awesome. Danielle, thank you so much. Dan, thanks. Ed, Mark, Bibbs, thanks for making this show so much fun today.
Thanks for
We're
having
passing
us.
notes.
Yeah, right on. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please follow me on Twitter and Instagram, both at Hal Rudnick. You can find some dank owls on my Instagram. Hoot, hoot. And all sorts of fun, dumb movie stuff. Yeah, hit me up on Twitter. We'll talk movies.
And I believe I heard your owl say, "Hey, give a hoot, vote in November."
Most
Yes.
important midterm
Vote.
elections
Yes.
of your life.
Yes.
Vote.
You youngsters, this one's on you.
Absolutely. If you're not registered to vote, make sure you're registered and vote. Absolutely.
Oh, also,
And-
if you are turned away at the polls for some bullshit reason,
Yeah.
Provisional
you can
ballot.
ask for a provisional ballot.
ask for your
Yeah,
provisional
right.
ballot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they can't kick you out of line. You have to go until everyone's done.
Yeah, we're not trying to say vote this way or that way. Just vote.
vote.
Please vote. Exercise your rights to vote as a citizen of the republic.
Would you like to know more?
Would you like to know more?
I wish we were that organized.
Listen. If you're for the rebellion or the Siths, okay, never mind. But yes, vote. And shout out to JTE in the booth. Thank you, Max, for holding it down. And Billy, I hope you're having fun out there somewhere. Aloha. Bye-bye, everybody.